behind it and how we, how and why we went about doing it this way, but it's also very open to ideas and suggestions at this point. So happy to answer questions, and please just feel free to pipe up or raise your hand, whichever works better for you. And I just want to start by kind of expressing why we have this enrollment, why we would like folks to kind of join the Million Acre Challenge. And the idea behind this enrollment process is to help us collect information about what practices farmers are doing already, particularly what combinations of practices are working well on different operations, because we know that soil health looks different on every farm and regenerative agriculture looks different on every farm, and that there's no kind of menu for how to do that. But what we're looking at is more of a roadmap where you choose practices and take the path that it takes you to get to that regenerative production model that works for your operation. So what practices folks are doing, what combinations of practices are working really well, what practices are interesting to farmers, and what are the barriers to adopting those, and what are some potential fixes that we can help offer. So a lot of practice information, also information about outcomes. So we don't envision that you get to healthy soils just by, implementing these practices. Again, it's not as much of a menu as it is a journey. So not just do this, but also what do the outcomes look like? What are you seeing on your farm? Whether you're using the Maryland Soil Health Card, whether you're using a soil health assessment like the Cornell Comprehensive Assessment of Soil Health that looks at chemistry, biology, and the physical traits of your soil, whether you're looking at something like the Haney test or a test from Waters Lab, or whether it's just something that because you know your farm and you know your soil, what are the outcomes? And also, what's your engagement with and commitment to soil health? And how do you show that in other ways besides just, the practices that you have in your farm? We think all three of those are really important aspects of getting further along on this journey. Anything else, Lisa, that, I was going to say, I think that one goal of having this information for us is to start working on being able to communicate farmers' commitment to soil health to consumers and to supply chain partners. And so really having a way to talk to folks outside of the farming community and policymakers, having a way to talk to folks outside of the farming community about why this is important, what farmers are doing already, what they would like to be doing, and how those folks can help. So that's a really important piece of why we are doing this enrollment work. Helping shape those policy proposals is key for us. Getting this information from farmers about where would you like to go and what would help you get there, that can help shape policy, and also to help farmers learn from each other. So for example, if you are a farmer who is using precision nutrient management really, really well to advance your soil health work, that's something that could really help another producer who wants to do both of those things and do them well together. So hopefully by getting a sense of what farmers are already doing, we can help them teach other farmers who want to get to that same level.
Amanda?
Yeah. Yes.
How do you, and if I missed this for a second, I apologize. How do you see getting that information out to, I know you talked about the farmer to farmer, but the importance of this kind of farming to officials and to the public, because I know you know this, but during the battle in Montgomery County against solarizing farmland, unfettered, there was a lot of perception from elected officials and others that we don't grow anything in the ag reserve except maybe hay for horses, and they were really they were really looking down upon commodities farmers regardless of how they grow, as though that was in no way, shape, or form food. And there's just a lot of ignorance out there.
There really is, yeah. I mean, and you're right, Ellen. It's super important. So one of the is part of the policy work of the Million Acre Challenge. We're having a series of farm tours for legislators that are starting next week, actually visiting some of these farms and really trying to impress upon them how these farms are working not only to produce food, which is really kind of the reason for being, but also to provide all of these other ecosystem services to the community, whether it's water quality, air quality, biodiversity, working towards carbon sequestration to the extent that again, that science is unsettled, but really working towards that. And the ways in which policymakers can help support them, whether it's farmland preservation, whether it's helping advocate for infrastructure and markets and aggregation facilities and all of the other things that producers need in order to do this work. So that's a piece that we're beginning with those legislator farm tours starting next week and going through mid-August. Then our public outreach working group is really focused on the other piece of that, which is consumer engagement. And we have just begun that work, but it's tough. It's a big job to kind of get folks to understand that piece, but not only farms that market direct to consumer, but also farms that sell into the supply chain. So we think all of that is important and working on that too. Lisa, do you want to add anything to what I've said about why?
Well, I would just add that, yeah, Ellen, both of those pieces are incredibly important, but this enrollment kind of represents the first problem we had to tackle, which was how do you measure a million acres in healthy soils, and how do we internally measure, like, if we're reaching farmers and able to help farmers, and also help farmers kind of track their own progress and improvements, and kind of creating that framework. And so this will then really help us make the arguments that we need on the policy and consumer outreach part of the equation. So this is a really important kind of first step that we need farmer involvement, farmer input on.
Now I'm seeing that I don't remember my password. So here is the first hurdle.
Yeah.
Lisa, do either you or Elizabeth have I'm not going to remember it. And do either one of you have one that you're logged into at this point, or should I stop sharing and we can talk more while I figure out how to log in?
Amanda, if you want to start from scratch, I put in chat my alternate email address, and we could just do a brand new one and set a new password if you want.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Okay, let's do that.
Yep. Farm at.
Not to cause you to multitask, but do you have numbers on how you're doing on enrolling?
We have 13 farms enrolled currently, which is not very many, but it is a good start for us. And we are hoping, again, if we've heard from folks that this is a long survey, and we are thinking about possibly making a shorter one that would get folks engaged without all the number work, and then move them towards the number work and just get a sense of what are you doing, what would you like to do, what are the barriers, how can we help, from that very initial kind of. So anyway, let me do this and everyone else can talk here. So here's the first challenge, is the logging in.
I'm going to ask a quick question, since there's just a handful of us here. Have Ellen and Emily, Janelle, have any of you filled out the enrollment yet or looked at it? That'll kind of help us know where we can focus.
Have we not enrolled I don't have personal acreage to enroll, but I'm, doing the work with Sugarloaf Citizens. Are we not officially enrolled? Because I know we're doing the soil.
You're in the benchmark study.
Okay.
And so we are, collecting soil health data and management data from you, but it is different than this enrollment. And I guess I would, probably Greg would need to, at this point, would need to be the one to fill it out, but I wasn't sure I know you're still very involved, so.
I'll talk to him. We're due to have a sort of an update conversation, so I'll look at this and then talk to him. I know he's got time constraints, but if I can help him get
Yes,
going.
I mean, July, no, we definitely recognize that we launched this in July, which is perhaps the worst month of the year to get farmers to sit in front of a computer. So,
And I know in Montgomery County, Jeremy Chris is trying to survey farmers for something we're doing, SEA is working on with leaf grow, and he's having trouble getting anybody to respond because they're like, yeah, not right now, folks.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So our hope is that this will give us a chance to go on, Lisa. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying all of us are former farmers, so we were pretty well aware of what we were up against, and you know, this is an ongoing effort, so it's okay.
Yeah.
I bet your numbers will jump in the winter when folks have a little bit of downtime.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll have had time to troubleshoot a little bit too as we move through. So
I'm gonna encourage us to move on just because we are already at the halfway point.
I know it.
So
here we go. So as you saw, we had to create an account and log in, and the idea there is that we will hopefully we'll have additional surveys that will go along with the enrollment that will help folks. Like we hope to do a digitized version of the Maryland Soil Health Card and some other ones that'll help folks track their engagement as we go on. So here we go, we're enrolling. This first just tells us why, what you get from being part of the Million Acre Challenge, what you give. This is kind of the motivational, which is not very motivational. We're hoping to include a short series. We have some really nice videos of farmers who have enrolled saying why they did. So we'd like to use some of those rather than all these words, but this does talk about why. Again, how to join, filling out the enrollment, and that we would like ideas, and that all the data is anonymous. So here's the data privacy, and we do ask folks to acknowledge that. Phone number, preferred contact method, and I'm not going to fill these out. Here's the farm name. We did fill that out when we did our registration, but we ask again. Here's a farming experience. Acres owned, acres leased, total acres in production, and acres in conservation. So acres you manage on which you do not produce a crop or animal product. I'm going to just fill this out for my farm so we can move forward. Where you're located. So if you're in Maryland, I think most folks are. There may be people that are not, and in that case, they can select their state. And what do you produce? And we do have a range of, we tried to make this as specific as we could get. I'm sure that there are many things that we have not selected here, and I'm gonna just pick two so that we have, here we go.
I think this is an important point to bring up here, both with this and with the practices that we list, is that it's important to us that you see your production system and your practices reflected in the choices that are offered here. And, you know, sometimes definitions can vary a little bit depending on your production system. So if something seems unclear or you feel that it's not reflected in the choices offered, let us know. And, you know, we can try to modify things to make it clear that we're trying to, you know, have different practices and production types reflected accurately.
How you sell. Again, we're looking at, we're not making this kind of question mandatory, but we would like to have a sense of how folks are selling so that we can help with the marketing of the soil health commitment of the farm to whatever that supply chain channel is, if that makes sense. And you can choose more than one so that just folks have an option to do that. Do you want to talk about these at all, Lisa, the soil health self-assessments?
Yeah, this is just to get a sense of what types of observations that you may be doing on your own outside of lab tests, and what you're using to kind of see, to monitor qualitatively how your soil is looking. These can be very powerful observation tools outside of, any lab test.
Same thing with this one. I think we all know that farmers have a lot of intuitive ways of knowing about what fields are healthy and which are not. And we would like to know, how are folks assessing healthy soil on their farm, again, outside of those more prescriptive ways. So I could go into that. For me, it's about soil texture, productivity. Farmers can fill out whatever is useful for them there. Have you done a laboratory-based soil health assessment? We give some options. There are obviously others. We don't feel like any of these are better or worse. We're just looking for something that does measure beyond just the chemistry or the nutrient needs, but also is looking at biology and the physical traits of the soil to some extent. I have not done it. Certifications, again, we're not attached to any of these as better or worse than any others. We're interested in what folks are doing for certification. And we do think having some certification, it shows some engagement. I don't have any of these, so I can't talk. Moving on. Again, all of these plans are useful in different ways, and we're just interested in what folks are implementing. We don't have commitments to one or the other above any of the others. I definitely have a nutrient management plan, soil and water conservation plan. Again, a room for other. I don't have a soil health management plan in place.
Quickly, the soil health management plan is something that there's one available through NRCS that is used to access NRCS funding, and you need a technical service provider to do that for you. But we have also developed a Million Acre Challenge soil health management plan that we will be making available, and that's really meant to be more farmer friendly. It's a plan that you can do for yourself, just to create, to look at where your constraints are and create short and long-term goals for having ongoing soil health in your operations.
And could serve as the basis for an NRCS approved plan.
Yeah,
wouldn't get you all the way there, but yeah.
Right, it's modeled very closely after that plan, so that it would be a short step to getting some technical service provider help and trying to access funds.
So now we kind of get into the practice piece. We have two different sets of questions about practices. Here we talk about, and we did use the NRCS practices as the basis for our survey. So here, these are all practices that are NRCS practices. We have some of these. If you want to talk about this at all, Lisa, we ask how long you've had the practice in place, how many acres, and what production types are affected. And so for me, it's my sheep and my poultry. There they are. And so I can choose both of those.
So we started with the NRCS practice list because there are it's a common language being used when trying to access funds for practices. However, we have tried to make the definitions more broad or more understandable for different production types. And we've also added some kind of nuance to some of those practices. So rather than just talking about cover crops, we ask about early planting, late termination, mixed species, whether you're grazing your cover crops, all kinds of additional detail that isn't really included in those NRCS practice standards. And again, this is where, you know, if the definition isn't sounding familiar to you, or if it's something that doesn't sound like how you practice it, you know, please feel free to share that feedback, and we'll try to adjust. Because these definitions weren't necessarily made with, like, you know, diversified vegetable farmers in mind. Um, they were geared initially a little more towards row crop farms. So,
By NRCS. Yeah.
but yeah, yeah, but they are
So
recognized conservation practices. They, you know, practices that have value for soil health.
So these are practices. The second set are ones that we go into in more detail to ask about. So this is going to ask me more about my prescribed grazing practices and how many acres we're doing it on, etc. And then it does ask, you know, are there things that aren't mentioned up there that you'd like to talk about? Just so that if folks have ideas that they don't see in the matrix that we've created, that they can add them in. We think it's important to gather as much of that as we can. Again, cover cropping practices, single species, multi-species, early establishment. This goes a little bit deeper than just asking about the practice, because we think the management of this practice is important to learn about as well. How do you terminate them? A lot of different methods of termination, so we have as many as we can in there. Cover crop grazing is another one that we think is really interesting to learn about, and so we have a range of questions about this. Tillage reduction, again, lots of different ways that folks can do that depending on the type of operation that they have, and giving them another option to list any practices that they use that are not already listed here. Nutrient management is another one where there's a lot of different ways of managing nutrient application, and making sure that we're reflecting those, the ways that folks do it on diverse operations. Obviously, everyone should have a nutrient management plan, but then you can go beyond that to the more specific methods that folks might use. Organic amendments, it could be poultry litter, other manure, compost. We're interested in what folks are doing and on how many acres. Again, we have no regulatory or kind of enforcement. We're not sharing this with anyone, so this is just for information. What are people doing and how is it working for them? It's not about the phosphorus management tool. It's not about your nutrient management plan. For us, this is information only. IPM practices, again, there's different ways of doing this. We want to know what's working for different operations. And we come kind of to the upshot, total number of acres under any soil health practice you listed this growing season, and to get at the sense of combinations of practices, or the synergy that might come from combining practices, total number of acres under 3 or more soil health practices, and what those are. What are the 3 soil health practices you most commonly use in combination on your farm? And then, do you plan to try out a new practice on your farm? I would like to. Which one? Again, looking at interest. What are folks interested in? What would make you more likely to adopt one? How many of these? Again, if there's another option, writing it in. How many events have you attended that focus specifically on soil health? So many, but I'm going to say 5. Not conducting any research. Again, this is just getting a sense of whether folks would be interested in the benchmark study. And now it's going to tell me what tier I'm in. And Lisa, do you want to talk? I know we're at 12:30. Do you want to talk about the tiers briefly?
Yeah, so the tiers kind of, they take the totality of what you've entered here, and they give you a badge of commitment with a tier level on it. There are some requirements to get to tier 2, so most people start in tier 1, and I would just say that tier 1 is a great place to be. You shouldn't take that as a like a poor score, even though there are 3 tiers. We would like farmers to complete the soil health management plan to move to tier 2, because that's just another, and to have taken a couple of soil health tests that include just a couple more indicators than a normal nutrient test, to show some of the physical and biological attributes of the soil. We just think those are important in order to be getting a really clear picture of your soil health management system and how it's working on your farm. So the tier badge will be something that you can just use to display in your marketing materials, on your website, and also to kind of track your own involvement and progress, and maybe see where there are gaps in your own efforts towards soil health on your farm. Ultimately, the goal is, we think that soil health is really important both for climate and for long-term financial and, crop growth resilience on your farm. So it's really just all tools to create that healthy, holistic farm ecosystem for yourselves. And, so that's where we're aiming with those tier badges. And, once you fill out the enrollment, you can always contact us for other, ways to move forward and other ways to get engaged.
That's awesome. I know we're running past when we said we would, but if somebody has some questions and feels they have time to put that out there, we'd love to entertain those. Our email addresses are options for reaching out as well if you need to hop off.
I have a question for you. How do you envision, I know that if we joined and filled this out right now, it would look very different because we're transitioning from how it will look in 1 or 2 years from now. So what's the system for then inputting new information? You're muted, Amanda.
I think, sorry, you would think after 1.5 years I would be able. I think we envision regular updates, Ellen, once folks enroll. That's the enrollment is really just the beginning of engagement, and we would like to see folks updating annually, and maybe not with quite as long of a survey, but kind of what's changed for you and why, and again, what are you interested in, and how can we help you? So that would be, then you could kind of see, oh yeah, now I'm doing these 3 practices, and now I have a soil health management plan, and I've done the Maryland Soil Health Card, and so I am in a different place than I was last year, and maybe in a different tier, which would be amazing.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, questions? And so our hope is really to keep folks engaged, and that this is just the beginning, and that we're able to engage folks in other ways, whether it's being part of our policy working group, our business case working group, all of these other ways, and that this is just a starting place.
When I assume you'll be assessing it, like if you got a bunch of people saying they were looking at silvopasture or considering it,
exactly,
then it might be an opportunity to say, okay, do you want us to get you speakers or
that's
consult,
right. That's
okay.
Right. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep, exactly.
It seems, I think, to newcomers like a whole lot of information. Why do I'm interested in soil health. Why do I need to put all of this stuff into something that looks this complicated? And for us, as Amanda and Lisa have both said, it's to create a profile, not just for the farm, but for the state of Maryland. And we've been tasked with trying to, for example, what is our baseline? Where is Maryland right now? We can't even begin to determine that without this kind of data collection. So we're trying to be responsive to what others in the soil health community are asking for.
Because my attention span is so short, I'm thinking back to the beginning when you were opening up, or maybe in information when it goes out, when you're soliciting people to join this, does it talk about those advantages? Like, we're going to hopefully, help you market with this tiering system, or we're going to be educating legislators to care about this so that it'll be valuable, or I don't know.
Yeah, there is a lot of that, Ellen, in that first slide
Okay.
or two. Yeah. But if you read through that and you think we've not done justice to something that would be motivational to you or anybody else, please let us know.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to hear that. We know that this is a lot of words, and some people might just skip right past this to get to the survey part. And so we are really open to other ways of communicating this. And Elizabeth has put together a couple of really nice short videos of farmers communicating that in a better way than I can. But other ideas we're so open to. So.
And at the end of the day, what we really feel is useful is for farmers to be encouraging other farmers. We already know that farmers learn from each other, and that's what they say is the best way for them to learn, is to see that somebody else has done it first and ironed out the kinks, and then they can help each other. So this is similar.
Cool. Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate the time and attention and staying a few minutes extra.
Here.
Take care.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yep, take care.
Faith. Hi.
Oh,
She's gone.
Goodbye.
And goodbye. Goodbye, Faith. All right. Well, that was fine. And it was good to run through it. It's not as bad as I thought.